Hello everyone, this is Björn Strid from the Night Flight Orchestra and you're watching Talking Records.
The theme of travel, of being on the road, seems to be a recurring motif in your music. There's also this feeling of flow and the constant movement within the music itself, plus of course the name dropping of the cities from around the world. What is it about this lifestyle, this experience of travel that resonates so strongly with the band to the point of becoming an integral part of its image?
Me and David, we met on this tour in North America when he was a session guitar player for Soilwork, and we just loved sitting in the back of the bus while he was moving and listening to music, and we just felt like we need to start a band that sort of captures that emotion, that feeling of being in motion. And like you said, it's become like an integral part of our sound. It's what we do, and it's always the sort of guiding star to find or to compose music that makes you feel like you're in motion. Of course you can listen to our music sitting completely still as well, but ultimately it's made for going somewhere, and I guess that's the sort of escapism running through our music as well, and to take people somewhere else if needed, and I think it's more needed than ever. If you read the news the latest week, I'm sure it's I feel like we're on a mission more than ever, but obviously at some point you also need to deal with reality, and I feel we also sort of provide that, and we build a contrast between real life stories and also songs that are full of escapism. So I think that's where the secret also lies. But like you mentioned as well, we name drop a lot of cities and streets and people and names, and I think that also make everything a bit more exotic and helps our music to sort of move forward. It makes you feel like you are traveling while listening to our music.
Since you mentioned the real life stories, can you tell me about this idea of marrying this nostalgic escapism with facing reality?
It was that was another thing that sort of happened when me and David started composing, because we were very different as people. He couldn't really deal with reality. He always wanted to escape it, whereas I was more sort of, I wanted to be in the now. I was more like sort of realistic, and we sort of introduced each other to our own worlds, and that became something special. Something special was born there, and both lyrically and musically, and I think that's also another element that's been really, really important with this new album, now that David is gone, and I want to continue on that path where I want to create a contrast with songs that are, it's fiction, it's very, sometimes even trippy. You have like Cosmic Tide, but then we have songs where I talk about Toronto and Runaways, for example. I used to live in Toronto for 5 years, and I'm basically writing a makeup song with the city of Toronto, and it's based on what I sort of experienced there during my years. So it's very grounded, but it's also very spaced out, and I like that contrast.
You started touring before you were even 20 and have spent much of your 20s, 30s and now 40s on the road. You must have countless cherished memories and also friendships forged along the way. Reflecting on these experiences, how have they shaped you and your view of the world and people?
Wow, that's a big question. Yeah, like I said, I've been doing this since I started Soilwork when I was 17 and probably did our first tour when I was like 19 or 20, and then I've been touring ever since, and it's I think it gives you a lot of experience, and you're able to sort of see things, have a different perspective on things. I wish every person out there could do some touring every now and then and sort of experience what it's like to meet people from different cities and different countries every day. It's a special feeling, and not many other, professions you can do that. I think it definitely opened up your eyes, and I've been just about everywhere. I mean, I have not been in, as far as continent goes, I still have not been to Africa, and something I'd love to do.
Beyond the romanticized image, what are some of the realities of touring that people might not realize?
Well, I mean, it looks maybe a bit glamorous, but it's really hard work, and it's like, oh, but you're only on stage for 1.5 hours. That's all you work. Well, it's, you're kind of stuck in a tour bus for a whole day, and it's like, well, people say back home, it's like, no, it must be better than, I'm going to a factory from 74. Yeah, I mean, in many ways it is, but when your day is done, you get to go home. And we don't, we're still stuck on the road, and yes, we're having a lot of fun, and I feel super grateful and blessed that I have 2 bands that, I can tour just about anywhere with, and people will come, it's fantastic, and but it's a lot of hard work, and a lot of downtime too, where you just sit around and wait for a sound check, it's like, oh well, you can go, go downtown and visit the city, which I do sometimes, but it says on the schedule the sound check is at 3, but it can happen at 2, but it can also happen at 4, so you don't really know. It's like, oh, you know what, screw this, I'm just gonna go downtown instead, and then somebody calls you when you're halfway there. It's like, you need to come back, it's sound check. It's like, okay. So it's it's a lifestyle in many ways. It needs to be, because it's, you don't get to go home at the end of the day, and I think that's the biggest difference, really.
Yeah, and being on the bus is also exhausting after.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, it's barely no privacy, so it's something you need to.
It's not a lifestyle for everyone.
No, and I mean, I've learned to adapt, and I'm not the most social person, I can be quite introvert and need my space, but I learned how to, go into my little bunk, that's your little space, and I can stay there, it's fine.
In the last few years, you have faced some difficult moments in your life. The Night Flight Orchestra tour was cut short because of the pandemic, and your friend and longtime collaborator David Anderson, as you mentioned earlier, passed away. He was also a very important part of this band, and yet while listening to this album, To Give Us the Moon, the first words that came to my mind were uplifting and triumphant. What was the key to turning those difficult experiences into something so positive and even life-affirming?
Yeah, I think it needed to be that for us, because I mean, when he passed away, we really had to, obviously grieve as a band, on a personal level, but I mean also musically, he was a big part of the band, and at first we were not sure how we were gonna tackle the whole thing, and he really wanted us to continue. We had this conversation on his deathbed basically, and for him it was only natural that we should continue, and that we had so much more to say, and we have a lot of songwriters in the band that have been writing all along, even though David was maybe sort of the main contributor, but we knew we had a really big challenge ahead of us, and we also felt that since we could see that David was on a really dark path the last years of his life, and it also affected his lyrics especially, and beautiful lyrics, but when you know a person, you can see that he's on this path, it's quite painful, and I think this album also became a little bit of a reaction to that it needed to be uplifting. It was not about like ignoring the darkness and all these things, because it's in there as well. I think it's an important element in our music, the melancholy, running through it. So it's all in there because we wanted to include his world, but maybe not the darkest years, that we saw. Maybe we wanted to remember him how he was before he got, sick from addiction, So we wanted to bring that David with him, and now with us, and now, looking back, I just see him smile. I don't see the dark times, and I think that's something that we wanted to run through this album. But I also want to show all the doubters out there, that are looking with a looking glass and listening to details like what is missing now that David is gone. It's like I'm gonna show them we can pull this off, you know. So it was a lot at the same time, you know, and I'm so incredibly proud of the band for pulling through, and hopefully we made, you know, David proud somehow, you know. I hope he can hear it somehow, and we're proud of it, and we know there's nothing we could have done different. It's all in there, we feel. It's like I've never been able to dig that deep musically, and I even wrote this epic song that I've never done before, which used to be David's sort of tasks, you know, and that became Stewardess, Empress, Hot Mess, and the Captain of Pain that finishes the whole album, and that was another challenge, of course, and a wild ride, and yeah, but I think it's an explosion of emotions running through this album, you know, and it feels very real, and I think people can really resonate with it, and that's our impression so far.
Your music is catchy, yet it avoids being simplistic. It's sometimes poppy, but never shallow, always having this extra layer of, like you said, emotion and even urgency. It's kind of like a Swedish language to express yourself through melody.
No, absolutely, and I mean, I you know, of course, as a Swedish band, you always need to bring up ABBA, but it's kind of inevitable because I think they really were the masters of, you know, speaking so directly with melodies, but still have quite complex arrangements, you know, and being very multi-layered, and they were so much more than a happy disco band, you know, like some people, oh, Dancing Queen and blah 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 blah. It's like there's so much more than that, you know. So I mean, it's always been a sort of a guiding star for us to write music that speaks directly, but be very playful and experimental with the arrangements, and not trying to police everyone, you know, and just being adventurous with what we're doing, you know, without becoming too pretentious. But it's become like a natural sort of language for us in the way that we compose, and you know, we also feel that it's sort of like a lost tradition, you know, from the late 70s and 80s. Of course, this band it's very much built on nostalgia, but it's also a tradition that was lost, you know, as a way of writing and playing and producing that is timeless to us, you know, and so that's something that we need to carry on that flag, really.
You mentioned somewhere that even as a teenager you were already collecting disco albums. So your love for this kind of music was there even then and didn't just show up as you got older. So was there some kind of childhood magic you were trying to reconnect with by starting the Nightlight Orchestra?
Of course, everybody's trying to hold on to their inner child, which I believe is very important, you know, but you also need to become an adult and face reality and all these things, and at a certain extent. But yeah, I've always just loved music, you know, and I you know, obviously I'm very much of a metalhead as well, but I'm also a lot of other things, you know, and discovered so much music when I was a kid. So of course it's deeply connected to that, you know, the Nightlight Orchestra. But I think it's also a feeling that we're providing something that we feel is missing out there, you know. We don't hear it out there. It's like if you're gonna listen to it, it's like you need to go back to, you know, 77 or, you know, 83 or 82 or whatever, you know, to find something like this. But it's also something that's very timeless, you know. We want it to be so much more than just us, you know, being able to sound like, so, oh, we're a bunch of metal musicians that can sound exactly like Foreigner in 1979. Look at us. I mean, it's like, that's not what it's about. It's about providing something that is missing out there and something that we believe is timeless and something that is needed.
Are there any albums you co-created, whether with the Nightlight Orchestra or Soilwork, that you feel are underrated or maybe misunderstood and deserved more attention than they received?
I mean, I would say that our double album, The Living Infinite with Soilwork, deserved more recognition. I think that it was a really special album, and it definitely got some good reviews, and I know people like it, but it kind of flew under the radar a little bit when it came out. Peter Witchers, one of the founders of the band, quit for the second time, and enter Mr. David Anderson. It's like, all right guys, let's make a double album. That's crazy to begin with, you know? But he really encouraged me to pick up the guitar again and start writing music, and something really amazing came out of it, something very experimental and very adventurous. And I feel like we were firing on all cylinders with the album, and we were really expressing ourselves. And it's really a double album that makes sense when you listen to it. So it's an album I'm very proud of, and yeah, I wish it could have gotten a bit more recognition. But maybe it's one of those things that will come up 10 years from now or something. I don't know.
Since we mentioned Soilwork, this year we celebrated 20 years of Studying the Drama, one of the milestones in your discography. Just like with the Nightlight, Soilwork is also constantly evolving and changing. How do you view this album today, and where does it rank among your personal favorites from your discography?
I'm definitely proud of the album, and it was really interesting to see, because we made a post a couple of days ago, and I also made like a personal post in my social media, and the amount of people from sort of different bands that really appreciate that album. I didn't expect that. I don't know why, but it's like I saw people like that mostly been playing sort of like true death metal or whatever their entire life, but they still really love that album. And my impression was that it's like, oh, that's when Soilwork turned like American, and it was like metalcore and blah blah blah. So that's the impression I felt for some people, but it means a great deal to so many people, and including myself, of course. But my impression is that especially Swedish people thought it sounded too American. But man, that album has meant so much to so many people. And I mean, I went to, not that long ago, I went into a bank, and I was like, and the guy behind the counter was like, it's like, I recognize you. He's standing there, suit and tie, and it's like, yeah. It's like, are you Björn from Soilwork? And I was like, yeah. It's like, Studying the Drama. I used to listen to that so much when I was a teenager, and I was like, when I was playing video games with my friends. It's like, oh, cool. I was like, and then I guess he stopped listening to us after that album, but I don't know, there was something special about that album that resonated with so many people. Maybe it was the timing, I don't know, but it has great melodies, and I don't know, I don't feel that it's, personally, I really love the album, but to me it's not very timeless. Listening back, it doesn't sound very timeless to me. And then I would say that Living Infinite and even Natural Born Chaos sounds more timeless to me.
If you were born a few decades earlier and you could be a member of one of the AOR, prog or disco bands that are now inspirations for Nightlight Orchestra, which one would it be and why?
That's a good question. I don't know, maybe I would have liked to be Lou Gramm, maybe, and I would have continued that journey a little bit longer. Foreigner. Great band. Yeah.
Thank you for watching my interview with Björn, Strid from the Nightlight Orchestra and Soilwork. Next to my head you will find links to other interviews on my channel, and I will see you next time.